There's the bow with the power cord bowstring. There's the hatchet with the cord. There's a saw. And then there's the knife with the cottonwood bark and an extra little holder stick in there. All right, today I know I crossed the line. I used a power cord for a bowstring. I used a hatchet for a socket. I used a saw for a socket. And I really crossed the line with the knife as I used as a socket. I'm not throwing my knife down. You crazy? So today's video is unconventional, and you never know what you can do with what you have. So based on what you have, use it. Or decide not to. If anything feels unsafe, don't do it. I don't recommend doing things that are unsafe for you. Let's start with a piece of cottonwood bark. Okay, here's some cottonwood. It's here, it's available. I'm using it. That's a good piece of bark. I'm going to start with a piece of cottonwood bark. Essentially, it carves really easy, and keep my hands out of the way. Cut that off, clean up the sides, clean up the bottom. Okay, so crazy thing number one. We're going to take a saw and we're going to make a socket out of it. I already made this one and I'll show you how I did it. Essentially what I'm going to do is cut a groove in this cottonwood bark. And once I get deep enough for it to fit in the saw, I'm going to round off the edges with my knife so it fits nicely in the saw. I want the thickest part of the saw blade to be used for this socket. Once I carved off the edges so it fits nicely around the saw blade, I am not going to hold my hand and put a divot in there. I'm going to go to the side. I'm going to just work it slowly and easily. So the first time you use a socket like this, it's possible to just use it as a regular socket until the spindle burns through the cottonwood bark and hits the metal. We have to talk about the spindle now. A thinner spindle on top is helpful. Once the spindle goes through the socket, it's going to hit the metal, and the metal is going to be the end part. Just like what we did for the apple socket in a rock. You may choose to have a longer tipped spindle also, and that's also fine. Let's give it a try and see how it goes. Here's my unconventional bowstring. This is basically a cord for charging a phone or plugging into the car, but this one broke and it's not good anymore, so I'm going to use it for something else. I'm going to attach it to the bow. I'll use my regular overhand knot and then the second overhand knot. Put that on top. And there we go. For the bottom, I'm going to do 2 half hitches. I'm going to go once and I'm going to go twice. All right. And that should seize up on itself quite nicely. There's just enough cordage to make this happen. So it's relatively safe because there's a saw blade here. Even if the socket breaks, the blade's just going to go there, but it's the back of the blade. So actually, let's be safe about it. Let's put a glove on, just in case. I'm going to use this spindle. And here we go. Here's how the socket looks pre-drilling. That should be enough for a ember. There's an ember. That's proof of concept. Here's how things look after drilling. So it's a very good system. It worked out just fine, and I can keep using this socket over and over and over again. And here's what the saw looks like, just in case you're wondering. Barely any damage. But what if I don't have a cheap saw and I want to use something bigger? Some of you might think this saw is not the best saw on earth, so what if I want to use another saw? Well, here's the Silky Big Boy, and it fits too. Part of the success of the socket is I didn't go all the way through on either side. So that's how the socket gets it done. Because I need the integrity of the bark to stay together. Time for the Silky Big Boy 2000. Well, there's an ember pretty quick there. So there it is, the Silky Big Boy 2000 and the socket. Here's the most controversial part of all. This socket right here uses the knife. Ooh. And the blade's going towards the thicker part of the cottonwood bark. What I did was I put a stick on there. I'm going to give you an up-close version so you can see what actually happened. Okay, so I took my saw and I cut in, I sawed in, I used my knife, and I cleaned out a groove inside there. There's the groove I cleaned out. That way the knife would fit. That was the intent. And I want the blade towards the thick part. So now, if you can see the metal in there, the metal of the knife, and I also have a stick to go on top. That kind of locks it in. And this little piece here is nice. So now when I hold it, it's going to keep everything together. And I'm also going to wear a glove. So let's see how this works. I have proper socket videos on more conventional items, so if you like those, and I recommend actually using those. All right, see what we can do here. A little overkill, but that's an ember. All three embers now in short time. Let's look at the socket. Here's what the socket looks like. Take this off. Take the knife out. There's some powder on the blade. I could put that in the, I could put that with the other powder, but yeah. Can barely tell anything happened on that knife. But again, the knife goes in, the stick goes on top. That locks it in. and the blade part is facing down, so that's how we're grabbing it. You only need one fire. Here's the last of the craziness. This hatchet's really nice. I like it a lot. This is like an old school, like old carbon steel axe. It says Kelly Axe Manufacturing. So this one I had to haft it myself. I had to put a new handle on it. I made the sheath too. So simple. But I like this one. This other one's a Harbor Freight one, which I actually like, and it works for me. But what I did was I put a socket divot in it. So now I can use this hatchet as a socket. Is this necessary? No. There's a lot of socket options out there. I went through plenty of videos showing you plenty of socket options, but it's just something, it's an option. It's something, if you want to do it, do it. You don't have to. What I did was I put this cord on here, and the cord's going to help me actually hold the hatchet, the handle up, because that gets a little bit heavy. So let's take care of business. I got my loop cord. Now I can hold the hatchet. I want to make it so that the blade is facing away from me, so not this way if I'm accidentally going to saw and hit myself. I don't want to. I can put the sheath on that hatchet if I wanted to, and I can, but I want to show that the blade is facing away from me. So the blade is facing away from me, so I wouldn't hit it with this bowing hand. So let's see what we can get here. And a divot in a hatchet doesn't have to be deep at all, just enough to work. And I don't think it's going to really ruin the integrity of the hatchet. But again, I wouldn't do that to my favorite carbon steel hatchet. There we go, there's an ember. Now, if for some reason it's a problem, if you find yourself having troubles keeping the handle up, you could always get a rock or a log. And you can let that help you hold it up. So that's an option too. So if it gets too heavy, at least have something to hold it up. Usually I put my hand in. I find whatever way works. Tweak the cordage however you like it. Now if I'm drilling, I'm like, oh, this is just too much for me. I can use the rock or a log to hold the handle of the hatchet up. This time I'm going to drill with the case on, so that way I have just enough of the socket exposed. See if I can get that ember back. I don't want to drill and hit the rock with my bow. All right, finally. All right, for those of you who stuck around, I had unfinished business with basswood bark. that I used a while ago. You get the tinder effect and you get the kindling effect, depending on how you think about it.